Nerd Initiative presents the Comic Press Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Comic Press Podcast. I am your host, JJ, or Jeremy, whatever you want to call me is fine by me. Here is my co-host for the day, Michael Rothman, co-founder of Nerd Initiative. And we've got a really awesome guest today, dude. We've got Gene, Miguel from Shortbox. What is up, man?
Nothing. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. Yes.
Thank God for that.
Although, admittedly, every day of the week sort of just blends together for me these days. So it's just another day.
Fair.
When you do what you love, it's not, there's not weekends and hump days involved. And so I can imagine, when you do what you love it, there is no, but it also gets tough, right? It's like 24/7, especially lately. You guys are doing.
Yeah. Well, no, there's that saying, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I do not subscribe to that. I think the exact opposite is true. If you do what you love, you'll do nothing but work, but you'll enjoy it.
Right. Exactly. You'll have fun doing it, but you're never going to stop.
Well, we appreciate it, at least, so that's good.
Yeah.
100%. So first off, start things off. For those who don't know what Shortbox is or who you are, explain to everybody who are you guys?
Yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Shortbox, we are a mobile app marketplace for buying and selling comic books. That's the easy way to explain it. We're probably all used to buying and selling on platforms like eBay. We're sort of generic marketplaces where you can buy and sell comics on there, but we are solely a platform for buying and selling comic books only.
So there's not, you're not going to get on there and find trading cards and toy model cars and all the rest of it.
No, all comics and graded comics, raw comics, which we just launched. So in addition to the comic books, there's also a bunch of other cool features like a price guide and portfolio manager, and I'm sure we can dive into that stuff later.
Oh yeah, we have to, of course. And I think, but we've talked about this in the past. Obviously we know each other pretty well, and you are known to be very passionate about the hobby and collectors and making sure that they have as many tools and have as many opportunities as possible to make sure they're head down the right path. Mm-hmm. Would love to tell about the origin of Shortbox. I know we've talked about it in the past, but I want to hear, again, for those that are new and watching this, because I think it's really special where you find out where a company came from. And Shortbox really is a special company. Through and through. And so I'd love to hear like how it came together, like basically like the origin story, I guess, of Shortbox.
Yeah. So I love that you're calling it an origin story because that's how I refer to it as, so it's really funny when, whether I'm talking to, business press or tech press, non-nerd press. And I refer to our beginnings as our origin story. I kind of get like the blank stare and then I have to explain to them what an origin story is. And so again, thank you for that. I appreciate you using the term origin story because that's exactly what it is. The spark really that set my co-founder BJ and I down the path of building Shortbox really came from a place of, this is going to sound a little weird, but it came from a place of both passion and frustration, right? Mm-hmm. So passion because we're both lifelong comic book collectors. It's something that's been part of our lives for as long as we can remember. It's part of our identity, which is, I'm sure, is the case for a lot of collectors out there. I'm sure a lot of the folks watching this right now, it's more than just a hobby. It really is a true passion. It's something that a lot of us identify with, so that's the passion part of it. The frustration part, because nothing has really changed or evolved in decades, and that was frustrating to us as collectors and technologists as well. We spent years, BJ and I, just years complaining over and over about how hard it is to do something as simple as buying and selling comic books. The barrier to entry is so high, very antiquated websites and experiences. It's just insane to us because, this is a massive secondary market. We're talking hundreds of millions, billions of dollars changing hands every single year on what's essentially dinosaur technology, literal 20-year-old web technology facilitating, these transactions, and it's not that welcoming, and it hasn't been that welcoming for many years, unless you consider yourself, really part of that hardcore, collector, that hardcore echelon of collectors that are used to these websites that have been around for 20 years. And so that's really where the frustration came from. We were just really frustrated that it wasn't accessible to everyone. And because we really just wanted to make comics more accessible, more mainstream, easier for folks to get into. And ultimately, that's when we actually just realized that nothing would ever change, and we decided that we'd do it ourselves, so that's exactly what we did. I guess that was like our I'll do it myself Thanos moment, that came up, without the universal genocide, of course.
Yeah, preferably, right?
Preferably, yeah. And at the same time, also, we're obviously we're lifelong collectors. We're very passionate collectors. We have a true love, for this hobby in this industry. But we're also technologists. BJ and I, we've worked in tech in Silicon Valley and in San Francisco for our entire professional careers for some of the fastest growing startups and the biggest technology companies in the world. And we really just kind of combined our powers and started working on Shortbox about 4 years ago. Well, more like 4.5 years ago now. We started working on it on nights and weekends. We were moonlighting, working nights and weekends outside of our day jobs. We also, we would take PTO and we would take vacations just to hack. We would literally rent Airbnbs for a week at a time in the middle of the woods, we would just hack and iterate and build, and then it got to a point where we're getting close to launch, and we took the big leap of faith, and we each left our jobs, admittedly, very cushy jobs in tech, to pursue this. And it's because we just had so much conviction in what we were building, and that it was truly something that the industry and collectors actually needed, because we're collectors ourselves, right? So we understand intimately what frustrates us, and if it frustrated us, we had to believe that it frustrated collectors all over. And so we truly felt like this was something that we could build, that we were uniquely positioned to build ourselves, just sort of like with our backgrounds and our experience, and to really help usher this industry forward, and kind of not be stuck in the Stone Age anymore. And that's really the origin story.
That's a great one too. And it's also like you said, it really is. I think all great companies or products come from, and they always say it, right? Like, if there's a need in the market or you're passionate about something, make it.
Right.
I love the fact that there's two things I love, and then I'm going to pass it to JJ for the next question, so I don't soak up all the air. I love the fact that well, I always say that. Gene's not aware of this. My line is, I'll say one more thing and then I'll shut up because I keep talking.
He's even got a shirt.
Yeah, a shirt made.
Nice.
Wore the Batman for you today, though. No, one is that 4 years ago doesn't sound that long ago. So what you accomplished in a short time, it's pretty incredible. And then the other thing, man, the stories of like just running and hacking and working, it's just like, it's awesome. It just shows that anyone can do it if you really spend a lot of time, have the knowledge to put the effort into it. And
it snowballed really quickly. It literally started us. BJ, our longtime friends, we both, fell in love with collecting again as adults around the same time. And it literally just started over us, just having a pint one night. And again, just complaining, like I said, just complaining about how bad everything is. And we really could not understand. I remember the moment so clearly where we were just shaking our heads. We're like, it sucks. Everything sucks. Like, why? Like, this shouldn't be like this. It doesn't make sense, and that's kind of, where that sort of like light bulb moment came from.
wow.
Well, you said you guys were already lifelong collectors. Anyway, how did you originally get into actually being a comic book collector?
Oh man, I actually love hearing this story from other collectors, because I think this is one of the most fascinating things you could learn about something. At least other collectors, everyone gets into it differently, and I just love hearing other people's stories. In my case, I have an older brother who's quite a bit older. He is 11 years older than me, so he was like a much older brother. And so when I was 4 years old, he was a teenager, in the early 80s, reading comics, and being the annoying little brother. I used to literally break into his room because he would lock his door so I couldn't get into his stuff. But I figured out how to jimmy the lock, with a thing just to get into his comic book stash.
That sounds so familiar with me and my little
I
brother.
actually didn't, and I didn't admit that to my brother until I was well into my 20s at that point, and he admitted to me. I was like, oh no, I knew. He was like, I knew the whole time. He was like, I just didn't say anything. I was like, that's a good. that's a good brother right there. But so I would literally just break into my brother's room and just go through his comic books. And I can't explain what it was about the comics that drew me to them. Obviously, it was probably, just like the artwork. And it's something that my older brother was into. So, I thought it was cool, looking up to him as a role model. But I very clearly remember just breaking into his room and just flipping through his books and reading them. And I would steal them and put them in my backpack and take them to school with me and show them off to my friends. And I actually remember the books that I read, the first comics I ever read. Well,
I
the
was gonna
first one
ask.
was, yeah, it was Frank Miller's The Dark Knight. That probably explains why I'm such a Batman fan. And again, for those who are meeting me for the first time, I'm a huge Batman fan. And so that was really my literal first experience of comics was Frank Miller's The Dark Knight. Probably not, child friendly, but I loved it. And then the other series that I read was Punisher Limited series. Again, definitely not kid friendly, but those were the two big series of the time. It was the Punisher Limited series, it was Frank Miller's Dark Knight, and it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like those were the three big series. And the other one is this 80s indie series called Fish Police. I don't know if you guys recall that, but it's really
sounds familiar, but I've never seen it.
During the 80s, there were a lot of these anthropomorphic characters and just random indie books popping up every single week. And Fish Police was this really sort of like obscure indie title that popped up around the same time as the Turtles. So those that's how I got into it.
I feel like that's something JJ would like absolutely.
Oh, I got one called Space Beaver. Don't even get me started.
We just ran content for what Horse in Hell. It's about a demonic pink rabbit from our friend Alan Dunford, and we created a trailer that's like he's like a general in Hell's army, and he was pulled out of like a hat, and he's now elite. It's just like the craziest
comics.
Yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
It's a wonderful medium.
I love that. But yeah, so that was my first entrance into comic books, my first exposure to it. And then through the early 90s and the mid 90s, being an adolescent, my mom used to just I grew up in the Bay Area, so during that time comic books were thriving. There were comic books on every corner, and it was such a huge scene out here, and there were comic book conventions happening almost every weekend. And she used to just drop me off there, just this like 7-8-year-old kid. When I think about it now, she was like, "Oh, this is awesome! I get to just like let him do his thing at the comic book convention for like 8 hours, and I could pick him up later." And so I would just get dropped off in cons, and again, just being part of the community, at such a young age and such an impressionable age, obviously, had its effect on me. And then, and I think, this is a story that I've heard many times from other people. It's you get a little bit older, you sort of like fall in and out of the hobby and go through different phases of life. And that obviously happened to me. As I got a little bit older, I kind of just fell out of it, but I never fell out of love with it. I just wasn't as active in it. And then again, as an adult, I rediscovered my love for the medium. Again, it was actually a friend of mine who gave me this book called this little indie title called Why the Last Man. And he was like, he was like, you have to read this book. It's so good. And I was like, cool. I haven't read comics in years. Let me give it a shot. And I just blew through it, and it just set me off on this path. And then here we are today, 10 years later, after that. And so things snowballed, very quickly.
That's awesome. Again, this is such a generic question, but I think you have such a wealth of information to share. Any highs and lows? I mean, obviously you just shared a ton of information, but I mean, like, all right, let me give you an example. This is a story I always share, and it's the low. And like you had mentioned, obviously you fall out of it, right? And in my case, you make some stupid decisions. Like I remember selling my Hulk 181 in college to get rims on my car. Okay. Really, that's my claim to stupidity fame.
I don't blame you for that one. I probably would have done the same thing if I even had a Hulk 181 when I was in college.
My mom had gotten for me when I was a kid, and it sat in there. And then I remember coming home from school, and this is like the early days of eBay. And I remember selling it, and the guy must have been licking his chops. He was like, "Oh, this kid is an idiot." Like, okay, cool. Like, let's do this. And he immediately got it and then moved. But is there any not like that, not showing, whatever. Is there any highs and lows for you that have forged the company that you built and the collector you are today? Like as far as something that happened or something you saw? I'm also a 90s kid, so we also went through, the breaking of Batman, the death of Superman. And it was I actually think it was a great time to be a collector. It's
I loved it. What a time to be alive.
Image Comics, like all the the vests and packs and pockets and
Yeah.
muscles and
Oh, and the straps, man. So many straps.
But is there any
I do. Sorry to interrupt you, but I do. On that note, I do remember very clearly being really into the hologram covers, the 3D hologram covers, and I'm just a kid with my allowance. I get like $5 a week, and of course I'd spend that whole $5 on buying 2 or 3 comics, and I asked my older brother again to take me to the comic shop, and there was the X-Men the Extinction events with the little hologram cards on the front during like the Weapon X era. And I like really wanted, and I should have listened to my brother. He was like, "You should be buying old stuff." He was like, "You should be go back and buy stuff from the 1960s and the 1970s." Yes, exactly. I love that you just had that.
the Wolverine cut.
That was not planned, by the way.
No, that was not planned at all.
Yeah, but I remember him telling me like, why are you buying this stuff? Like, go, like the old stuff is what's cool. And I was like, you old man, like this is like what's cool now. And so that again, that's just another cool like core collecting memory. But to your question about high points and low points, that's a great question. That's actually not something that I really put too much thought into. But we've all probably had low points, throughout the collecting life and journey. And the obvious one that comes to me is very generic, and I mentioned earlier, it's just years of frustration, right? Of just complaining just about all the gatekeeping in the industry, about all the barriers to entry. It's very generic, and there's probably a lot of things that lead up to that. But it reminds me of just like one moment that I had at a convention. This is probably 10 years ago. I was at a con. I had recently gotten back into collecting like very seriously again. I had my career was taking off. I had a lot of like disposable income. I was like, wow, let's go to Comic Cons, and I could buy my 181 that I've always dreamed about having just as a kid, but could never afford. And so, I was at this comic book convention, and I was there. I didn't have the relationship with the dealers as I do today. Obviously, like I know basically all the dealers in the industry, and I have great relations with them. But back in the day, going and looking, and I went to one particular dealer's booth, and I actually hate telling the story because I don't want to give dealers a bad rap because we exist to help them. But people, I don't think this will be a surprise to share with them. But I went to a dealer's booth. There was a book I wanted to look at. I said, hey, can I take a look at that book, knowing very well that it was kind of a pricey book. And the dealer looks at me. He literally just looks me up and down. And he goes, no, you can't afford it. And he just turns around and starts like helping someone else. And I was stunned because I thought, is this guy joking? Like maybe he just like, just kind of like a sarcastic brand of humor, which I can deal with. But like there was no like full circle moment. He actually just like left and just completely ignored me. And my jaw just dropped, and I couldn't believe it, that someone would treat someone like this. And again, I know that story is probably not unique to me, just because I've also heard horror stories from other collectors that have similar experiences, and it sucks. And it's those types of experiences and interactions that keep people away from just like this awesome community, this awesome hobby. It's always sort of just like the one bad apple kind of like spoils the lot, right? And just thankfully it didn't push me away from the hobby, and it very well could have. And I just think about how many people did get pushed away from the hobby because of one poor experience from like one bad community member or one bad dealer that just like left a sour taste in their mouth. And that hurts, and I hate that, because there's so much just like love and acceptance, and just people are so friendly in this community. We all like to nerd out with each other, and so just anyone just dealing with that type of experience, just like that is something that I don't want anyone to deal with. And so for us, if I'm going to tie it back to how did that impact sort of like our journey in terms of like how we're building Shortbox, at the end of the day, everyone in the company, we're all collectors, and we all understand how important these books are to people. And so we make sure that we treat everyone with the same amount of respect, whether it's you just want a status on why is the book late, or hey, like there was like a crack in the slab, and it's not about just brushing them off and actually like listening to them, because for a lot of people, we don't know, that might be one book that they've been wanting to buy for years and years and years, or something that saved a lot of money for. And I know we've all dealt with really bad customer service in this industry, and that is something that Beej and I knew that like we would live and die by this. And that's something that sort of like we preach like internally. And so that's sort of like that was the one bad. I actually didn't think I was going to have an example, and then you got me thinking, that just sort of like popped up. And so again, that's sort of like one low point, but contrast that to the highs, right? We don't have time to go over all the highs that I'm sure we've all dealt with, but for me, the general umbrella there is the community. You're probably going to hear me say that a lot. It's That's why we're chatting with each other now. It's the community is everything. We're all collectors. We all probably feel the same way in that it's no fun to collect in a bubble or be siloed. It's the nature of being a collector that you want to share your collection, your passion. You want to connect with others who share the same interests. And so, things like social media for all its pros and cons, has just been an amazing tool for fostering community, connecting people you would never otherwise be connected with, just because there's something so personal and primal and fulfilling about connecting with other comic book people in person. It's so hard to explain, but I'm sure you all know what I mean, when I say
Oh
that.
yeah, 100%.
And yeah, and I've made so many friends in this community, many of whom will likely be lifelong friends, and these all started online on YouTube or on Instagram or any other message boards. And I love meeting with them in person at cons or even just virtually, just like this, because that's what excites me really about this entire industry. It's just the thread between all of us collectors, and ultimately it's how can we build a platform just like drop barriers and just make it easy for everyone and put everyone on the same and equal and level playing field, just for, again, doing something as simple as collecting comic books.
I love it, man. Well said.
100%. Well, and like, speaking of community, like Michael preaches this all the time to everybody at Nerd Initiative. You gotta, we're supposed to be a community. We're a team. We want to foster, the positive attitudes. So is that something you actively search out for in your staff when you guys hire? Because even your street team people seem like the sweetest people on earth, like,
You're awesome.
And coolest and unique too, as well. Like,
yeah.
all have different angles and different personalities and just like something to add. And it's incredible to see.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Thank you so much. The street team is awesome. Like, for those who are watching who aren't familiar, we have our street team, and these are folks in the community that really represent the brand. They represent Shortbox. They represent collectors as a whole, the community, and they're out there attending cons, creating content, interacting with the folks, and really just sort of representing our brand. It's a way for us to reach even further into the community than we would be able to just on our own. It's being able to identify and find the right folks who sort of on the same wavelength as us, if you will. But with regards to your question about our employees themselves, that's a great question, and it's something I have a lot of care for, because, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but every employee at Shortbox is a collector. I won't say that's like a prerequisite. Like, we don't go out and say like, oh, you have to be a collector. That's just we are able to attract people who genuinely want to work for us or for a company like us, because they're collectors, and they like what we're building, and they like the path that we're going down. So it has allowed us to really attract a lot of the right people, and put us in a really advantageous position of where we're bringing tons of talented and experienced folks, just in their professional careers to help us build this company. But it is important to have that authenticity, and to be collectors ourselves, because it trickles down to our users, to our customers. Our entire operations and support team, they're all collectors. They've had the same frustrations as me and BJ and as you guys. They understand how frustrating it is to watch tracking and then it doesn't update and you just don't know, and then you go and you complain, and customer support is like, I don't know, go call your post office and figure it out. And it's like, is that really how you're going to handle this? So there's a deep, intimate knowledge of what collectors are going through, and we want that to show through our support team. They're, I tell them all the time, they're the people that are going to be talking to our customers first before anyone else. So they have to be able to empathize with them and understand that it's not just like a $5 tchotchke that you're buying on Amazon and expect to receive in 2 days. Sometimes these are expensive books that people save up a lot of money for to buy, and we just need to make sure that we're listening to them and we understand their needs, and we do. And again, it's not just the support team, it's also our marketing team, obviously being able to understand the community and the landscape and our users, and be able to talk the talk and walk the walk, and be really authentic. And that's super important to us, because we are a very community first platform, and so it has to be real, and we have to be collectors. We're not just like some random Silicon Valley evil tech corp that's like trying to take advantage of the comic collecting community. It's like, we are the community. Like we're literally the community, and we're building for ourselves. And so that works. And also people might be surprised to hear this, is our engineering team. I know our customers, they don't talk and interact with our engineers, but our engineers are actually all collectors themselves, and they're hardcore collectors themselves, and that actually helps. That is a competitive advantage for us. We're not just hiring random engineers to just go and like build an app for us, even though BJ and I built the app first, but the engineers that we have, they're all collectors, and they understand the features that need to be built. They understand how a feature is supposed to work, what the user expects to happen, and it just allows us to move much, much, much faster and to build like really, really good intuitive features because the folks that are on the team building it know what needs to be built. We're not just like saying, hey, this has to do this, here, go and build it. We have deep conversations. We sit there discussing and debating how something would work. And when you can have that discussion with your engineers because they're collectors themselves and they get it, that's a superpower. That really is. And it allows us to just, build this with such velocity and ship features just really, really quickly. And that's a huge competitive advantage for us.
Speaking of which, I mean, you just perfect segue. I mean, when it comes to new features and my God, the tear that you guys are on as far as like every other day. And I know you gave the keynote at Shortbox Live, for those who don't know, which it was the first annual convention, and it was absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm. But thanks for coming out, by the way.
Yeah, no, it was. I had a blast. It was one of the coolest things. And like, for those who don't know, like, it was Santa Clara, and I just love the idea of everything was in one room and there was the main stage in the middle. And so you don't, I think when you go to conventions, like the biggest thing is the FOMO factor, right? Where you break out to go to a room, or you go to this, or, I mean, I know for example, D23, I was there and I was in, was it Hall H, or what do they call it? Hall D23. I get mixed up all the main stages, not names or whatever.
Yeah.
And because I was so exhausted, and they made us basically watch the entire Avatar movie at the end of the Marvel presentation, which was super annoying. I skipped the Spider-Man panel and I missed out on comic books. Yeah, the D23 books, like all that stuff. So it's hard to kind of navigate those things. I loved how everything was in one room and you could kind of just be in the room the entire time. So I thought it was absolutely amazing and a great time. But during that keynote, you talked about a lot of things coming, and they have. And so we got to go into these things one at a time, because the stuff that you're doing is incredible. So what are we going to do? Let's see. First of all,
there's a lot.
Yeah. Let's talk raw books, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, if you don't mind me interjecting and taking one step back, because you started a thread that I want to tug on a little bit, if you don't mind me relaying this slightly. We'll circle back, I promise. But with regards to conventions, you mentioned having the stage in the middle of the room and everything is in one room, and that was very deliberate and by design, because I mentioned earlier that the industry as a whole hasn't really innovated, hasn't really evolved, really because it hasn't really needed to, and there's just been sort of like, let's just call it a lot of like gatekeeping, involved. That applies to comic book conventions as well. And this is the thread I wanted to pull on is I think cons need to evolve, because again, I'm sure this is probably not a surprise, but I buy a lot of comics online, a lot of times through Shortbox, sometimes through eBay, or wherever I need to find the book that I need to buy. I'm sure you guys do the same as well. And these days, cons don't necessarily have to fulfill the pure purpose of just commerce, because we can all go find books that we want. That's just the reality of it, right? And like sure, we love going to cons, and there's nothing that can replace seeing a book in person, and I love that, and that's still important. But just from a pure commerce perspective, there's less of a reason to go to cons now if it's just for that, if it's just to buy comics, because you can probably find those same books online. Those dealers probably have their books listed on their website, or on eBay, or on Shortbox, or what have you. And so this is something that I put a lot of thought into, because I think cons do need to evolve, and I think they need to focus more on I spent a lot of time talking about community. I think that's the aspect that shows need to tilt back towards. I think there needs to be more deliberate effort into fostering community. And then that goes back to sort of like events and convention design, interactions with people, allow people to interact with creators, not just creators, but other collectors, even if it's as simple as just like meetups or comic swaps, or just, interactive exhibits or talks, just like the one that you did on stage at Shortbox Live, and just giving people avenues and opportunities to interact with each other. Because like I said, we all interact with each other on social media and online, but nothing can replace, that face-to-face sort of person-to-person experience. And I think cons should these days, and this is just my opinion, but I think they should really focus on sort of the community aspect of it, and giving people reasons to go to a con outside of just pure commerce. Because again, it's most people buy stuff online these days, and you don't necessarily need a con to go and buy a book that you want. You could just go on Shortbox, go on eBay, go on somewhere and just buy a book. You don't need that, but you can't replace sort of like the in-person bonding that you get between collectors. And so again, that was the thread that I wanted to pull on a little bit, because you got me thinking about it.
No. I'm glad you brought that up. And so you've actually opened a can of worms. So apologies. No, I genuinely could not agree more. And look, my wife works in commerce, and more importantly, experience. And I've been doing this, for a while, and whether it's interviews or getting to know people, and I lean on the experience as importance, right? And my wife's big on that. Like, she's done it for several companies. And so, getting back into the convention scene with those set of eyes, there's so many things, and JJ knows, and I won't go on the longest rant ever. There's some things that we'll say some conventions that are ran by certain big corporations that are not ran well, and it really sucks the life and the fun out of it. And then you have stuff like, whether it's Shortbox Live, or even, I think C2E2 was a one that we all went to and met up with and had a blast at. And one experience, and JJ's going to kill me for this, and maybe you as well. I had an amazing experience with Zeb Wells. I know everyone hates him right now, but like, it was one of the best chats, him talking. I was in the VIP lounge, and he came in. I know Charles Sewell from, they had their certain guests that were coming in to kind of talk and sign books, but just chat. And Zeb was honestly talking about his time at Robot Chicken and his career, and talking smack about Seth Green, and going on and on. It was honestly something I walked away from that I'll hold on to. That was a blast. And I was like, look, if you can bottle that is what people need to focus on. And it needs to be about the customer, and about, what do you want to do? And not this, there's another convention I will say that we were in lines for, and it's coming up maybe later this year, and it's in the tri-state area, and we'll say lines for 4 to 5 to 6 hours. And it's just awful. And it can be avoided. You hire more people, you have it run better. People are paying, so much money. So you got me on the soapbox now. And so I could not agree more, because I think the experience you walk away from, and I can close my eyes right now and picture Santa Clara and Shortbox Live, and sitting in the row, and whether it's Reggie Collects, asking people in the audience what books they got that day, or, Crow and Low up on stage, that is the stuff that you hold on to long-term, versus, like you said, commerce it's tough, because look, the price is a little higher. There's a lot of stuff that's there that you don't probably shouldn't get, that maybe you do get. So it really is to make people happy and really have an enriching experience. It takes a lot of care. And I see JJ smiling, so that's where I will stop my TED talk right now.
Oh no, you were saying spending money that you shouldn't, and that's usually what I do at every con I go to. But
Guilty.
So let's off to the features, because again, we should have another show down the road just talking about that, because I think conventions do need to be innovated, and more so about the people that are there. And I think if they do that, you have a customer for life. It really is that one little experience will last with someone for a longer time. And yeah, whatever. I'm done.
Well, I'm glad we discussed it.
It's a great topic.
So raw books.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you mentioned we did, announce a lot of features, and we've shipped a lot of features. Just our velocity of updates has been pretty crazy the past few weeks. But raw books is big for us, because for those who aren't familiar, when we launched Shortbox, you could only buy and sell graded comic books. Again, this was very deliberate. This was by design, because being a new marketplace, a new entrant in the space, we had to earn the trust and support of the community. And the easiest way to lose that is if you just allow people to start selling raw books, and people get scammed, and they get pissed off, and they ban it, and you just lose them forever. The way that we did it very deliberately was only allowing people to buy and sell graded comic books, because that, again, has built-in sort of authentication and trust and safety. But again, we can debate that also on another show. But it allowed us to sort of manage the trust and safety and the expectations there. But very much the way that Bijou and I complained about how hard it was to buy and sell comic books, it's doubly true for raw books. I'm sure we've all had nightmare stories. We've all probably been scammed. We've all probably bought a book with a missing centerfold, or whatever, or giant chunk missing out of a page that the dealer or seller didn't disclose, or something that's vastly overgraded. It's happened to us, and it sucks. And then you have sellers on eBay who, say, "Oh, I'm not a professional grader, so just look at the photos." It's like that's just like the worst.
I
Well,
hate that response.
a lot of this started just from that, and we spent a lot of time just thinking about, if we were starting from scratch, if we didn't have other platforms to look at for inspiration, because frankly, we don't want inspiration from other platforms because no one's gotten it right. How would we do this? Like, what do sellers want? What do buyers want? And a lot of it was just giving buyers, most importantly, peace of mind in what they're buying. And so for us, uh, if you buy a raw book, we're going to be opening up to all sellers. If it crosses a certain threshold, it automatically comes to us first. I'm not going to say grading because we're not graders, right? But it comes to us to verify and really sort of just inspect the book. And so what I mean by that is if a seller lists a book, they have to state a grade. They put multiple pictures up, they have to set a grade. So let's say you call it, like JJ put a book up for sale and you say it's a 7.0. Okay, someone buys the raw book and it gets shipped to Shortbox first. What we're doing is we're literally taking the exact copy that you shipped us and we're comparing it to the original listing to make sure, is this the same exact copy that you sold?
Oh, okay.
Right? Like, and there's ways to do, and
Gotcha.
you can imagine it's not rocket science. It's you compare it, the spine tick here and the spine tick there. There's a crease there, a crease there. What we're looking for is just like things outside of the band where it's obvious, like, well, this one has a ripped front cover and the listing showed one with a complete cover. Something
Mhm.
doesn't like add up here. And then, that way we can protect the buyer and we can go back to sell and say, hey, maybe you shipped us the wrong book. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they have multiple copies of the same book and they inadvertently shipped the wrong one. So that's sort of like step one, just making sure, is this the right copy of the book that got sold? Is this what the buyer is expecting? We have to put ourselves in the buyer's shoes. And the second part of that is, again, we are not graders. We're not CGC or CBCS. We're not authenticators. But what we can do is look at the book, inspect the book, and using our experience and expertise, across the team, can we say with confidence that this book falls within an acceptable range of what the seller said it was? So JJ, if you said it was a 7.0 and I look at it and or myself or our director of operations looks at it and we say, yeah, I think this is within range. Like this could be a 7.0, but obviously maybe it's a 7.5, maybe it's a 6.5, but is it within an acceptable range? Again, what we're looking for are outliers. Right? Did you call it 7.0 and then we get it has a missing back cover and a missing center and a detached cover?
Right.
It's like,
the
okay,
marker
that's
on
like,
the front of it,
it's
or
like not even close. Like it's like not even the same
All
stratosphere.
tape
So,
on the
yeah.
spot.
So we're looking for things outside of sort of like an acceptable band. Because again, it's all subjective, but we have to do our best to make sure that it's at least in line and it matches the buyer's expectations. So that's just another layer of protection that we have for the buyer. And if everything looks good, we pack it up really nice and we get it to the buyer. And then if it doesn't look good, then it allows us to mediate. We can go back to the buyer and say, hey, this isn't going to be what you expected. Do you want to cancel the sale and get a refund? That's totally fine. Or we can mediate and go back to the seller and say, hey, maybe you missed a detached cover and a missing centerfold and a big piece missing. Do you still want to sell it? Maybe we sell it for a lower price and we can offer that back to the buyer and sort of play the middleman there. Again, this is those are edge cases. We've been running the raw book beta for about 4 weeks now, and thankfully the rate at which we're turning around books is minuscule. It's virtually zero because there's a lot of ways to mitigate this through software and sort of experience. Like make sure they put multiple photos, make sure they state a grade, make sure they list any sort of like issues with the book. So there's ways using software and product to minimize that, but it's our job to catch those that pass through the filter. So raw books will be big for us. We're rolling out to all sellers soon, and we're going to learn really quickly. If the community buys into it, really.
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, look, I like you mentioned eBay, obviously, and eBay's a big platform along with other ones, but I think there is always that fear, right? Like when you get something, I can't spot color touch. There's things I can't do. It's nice to know. And it's funny, this is a random, and Kevin would love this, but I'm mentioning this right now. Like it reminds me of like GOAT, where like there's a damaged box or there's something missing on a sneaker. For those who don't know, GOAT's a buying and selling platform for sneakers. They will come back to you and be like, hey, the seller has offered a 10 or 20% discount. And so I was like, it's a really nice security blanket when you're buying something that, again, like you said, graded comics are easy. Not easy, but easier. And so it's really nice to know to have someone's in your corner, almost like a, what's the word I'm looking for? They have them at hotels, like the
concierge.
Yes, thank you. I'm an idiot. So it's nice to have that, especially because we've all been, you talked about, we've all had situations where you buy it looks great, to the, whatever. So to have an expert and an expert team behind it, I think it's something that people have been waiting for a long time. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's hard, and admittedly, it is hard, and for us as well, it's going to be a learning experience for us as well, especially once you roll it out to everyone, and it scales really quickly, and so there's going to be a lot of learnings on our end as well, and sort of it's just philosophically, it's open kimono to our community. We want people to share bugs. We want people to share feedback. We rely on them to tell us if something's not working or something's not working the way that it should be, and so a lot of this is a learning experience for to redesign if we need to, the policy and the experience there. But you mentioned Goat. I'm glad you mentioned that because I left this out earlier, but Goat was a huge inspiration for us with
Oh,
Shortbox.
nice.
Quite literally, BJ and I looked at each other when we were, having a pint and complaining about how bad everything is. I literally said out loud, "Why isn't there a Goat for comics? Like, why doesn't this exist?"
That's
Right?
amazing.
It exists for sneakers, which is the massive market. It exists for there's similar platforms for trading cards, and sports cards and other collectibles. But for some reason, in this multi-billion-dollar collectibles market, comic books that's been around longer than any of those other verticals, there just isn't a modern platform to do it. And we looked right at Goat as a model, for what we're building. We drew a lot of inspiration from them and just have a lot of respect for the platform that they've built and the way that they've sort of take care of their community. So much so, and this actually is public, so I can say it, but the founder and CEO of Goat, Eddie Liu, is actually an investor in Shortbox as well.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a great relationship with him. He's a friend, and literally just told him, "Hey, we're building Goat for comics. Let's go."
That's so cool.
And he was
It's
into
funny,
it.
One of their lead developers, I think I can say this, it's okay. My wife's not gonna get pissed. Works with my wife now at her company, and she loves. Look, all good things. She loves him. He's amazing. So yeah, that's really cool. It's such a small world because I was a big sneaker head. If you open up those doors back there, there's like a whole closet of sneakers.
Nice.
I was a big sneakerhead before and during comics, and yeah, it's nice when you have something you can trust and like a home where they take care of you and the service is good. And it is, for people out there, it is harder than you think. Like,
Yeah.
We're not going to go down the laundry list of like, companies and places that are tough, but like it is hard. And so you really kind of gravitate. And that's why I said before about the convention stuff too. Like once you earn someone's trust, as long as you just keep it up, like you really have a fan and a customer for life. Like whether
And the opposite is true. You could lose trust instantly. Right? And that is something that we remind ourselves every single day, that just because we have one customer that loves us and showers us with praise, all it takes is one bad experience and you lose the customer for life. It's so easy to lose, especially when it comes to things like collectibles and comic books, where people again have very personal and close relationships with these things.
Yeah.
We have to constantly be earning our customers' trust over and over and over and over and over. And that is something that I hammer to our support and ops team, is that you always need to be earning it. It's never one. It's never, ever one. And a lot of it just comes down to just respecting them and understanding the collector and empathizing with them, and just always making sure that we're doing our best to bend over backwards and earn our users' trust over and over and over. And it never ends. You never just have it. It could be lost in a second.
That's
Well,
awesome.
and see, that's something that a lot of comic book store owners still haven't really gotten, because some of them you can't even pull the back issues out the bags and look at them at all. You can't even inspect what you're buying.
Right.
It's
So
sad
with
too,
you
because-
guys, it's so nice that like, you actually have somebody there that's going to be at least looking and making sure you're getting what you're paying for.
Right. And at the same time, we want our community to keep us honest too. We invite people, and the good thing is, we have, our customers are so open and they feel comfortable sharing feedback with us, and even just critical feedback with us. Like we'll have people literally tell us like, "Oh man, like, I didn't like, maybe you could have like answered this like I did." Like they'll tell us because they know that we're actually listening. That's actually just like the irony of it, is that they're more open to sharing critical feedback with us because they know we're always like listening. And again, that's also something that sort of has to be earned versus, someone just trolling or being angry for the sake of being angry.
and now we're getting into AI, so it's a whole slippery slope.
Yeah.
I mean, no humans on the other end at some point. It'll just be like bots and trolls and things like that.
Right.
And so next topic, I feel like I'm on around the horn, or PTI, whichever one.
Yep.
Again, because it goes on, and we're not going to be able to encompass all the updates and all the new features. But so we have raw books. We also have the price guide.
Oh, yeah.
This is really cool. And I know you're very passionate about this because, again, it is something where for new collectors, it's not like the 90s where we had Wizard and we had like, I think Beckett was around there for cards at that time. It's hard to know. There's all these different things out there and platforms out there, and they charge you this and there's this, and then you can do the legwork on eBay if you want to, spend hours, researching and finding out and whatever. But to have that built in, and you have so much stuff built in, which is incredible. Historical data. There's, we've gone in the past, like you have a green, yellow, and red light for like as far as, but like the price guide is, I know tell us how that came about, because I know you're very passionate about it. And I'm sure this is going to be an incredibly passionate story because you want people to have this access to it. You want them to be better informed, basically.
It's access to information. That's all. That's what it boils down to. Just everyone should have access to the same information and not be gated, behind a paywall. This is something that again, I'm super passionate about this. Both BJ and I, we're both hackers. We're both technologists. We are huge proponents of open source software, and we've been very involved in the open source community for our entire careers. We believe in an open and free internet, and the reason why I'm saying all this is because it really matters, because access to information is super important to us, and that includes having a level playing field between buyers and sellers, having access to the same information at the same time, so both sides can make informed buying and selling decisions. And so access to publicly available information should not be gated behind a paywall. We want to make sure all collectors, sellers, dealers have access to pricing data without having to pay for it. None of this information is private. It's all out there for free. A lot of us know how to search eBay by sold listings. Your viewers here, they're all seasoned collectors. I'm sure they're already familiar with how to search eBay and look up sold listings. So, the data is there, the information is there, it exists, whether it's on eBay or other sources. So for us, it's about really just sort of like democratizing access and creating a level playing field, because we don't want the sellers who are out there just trying to take advantage of buyers, right? And that's not healthy for the hobby long term. And if everyone has access to the same information, then it just becomes a very level playing field, and everything sort of equalizes, right? Books get sold for what they're supposed to be sold for, and people don't get screwed over. I know some people might think like, oh, well, that's how we get like really good deals. Okay, well then now they're taking advantage of people that are trying to just sell the books who may not be that informed. It's not just buyers, it's sellers also. They also need to know how to price their books, which is why, when you list a book for sale on Shortbox, if we have enough data, we show you like an FMV range of the expected value of that book, but we also show you recent sales, so you can actually just come up with your own number, but at least having all the information there at your without having to leave the app and go somewhere else and kind of come up with your own calculation on the side. Like we just show it to you and give it to you. And so ultimately it just comes down to giving collectors and buyers and such just access to information for free, and that's really what it is, and that's super important to us.
Yeah, we've all been there. I mean, look, we've all been there as sellers and buyers. Like, I mean, as a seller, you list something wherever it is and it sells in like 5 minutes. You're like, oh no. You're like, did I just literally click away? And I mean, like I've done it in the past with like tons of stuff, and you rebound and you have a short-term memory. And then as buyers too, like you buy something and the same thing, you start looking, you're like, oh, I could have gotten this like half, so it's incredibly helpful and important.
Yeah. I mean, we also have, for people who have used the app, I've seen it, we have the red, yellow, and green dots, the sort of FMV indicators on there. And, we get tons of good feedback, and people say, hey, that helps make the buying decision much easier. Because if they see a green dot, they know, hey, it's priced fairly. And if it's a red dot, it's like, maybe it's like more of a premium price. And then you can decide, maybe you want to submit an offer on it. Maybe you can see if there's some room for a negotiation there. But on the flip side, admittedly, we also have some sellers that don't like that, because they say, hey, why my asking price is a red dot, no one's going to buy it. Well, it's because the last sales are 50% of what you're like asking for. And so, that's not our fault. That, the market ultimately decides. That's the interesting thing about collectibles, is that, the market will decide what a book is worth. At the end of the day, they're just, it's just pieces of paper, but it's something that, we add value to it because, of nostalgia and demand ultimately.
Mm-hmm. I'll let JJ take the next one, because
portfolio management, man. This is one of the things that people really, really, really hate to pay for. because they want to just be able to catalog their stuff.
Yeah, but this is again of the same philosophy, right? It's just a tool that makes it super easy for people to manage their collection. Obviously, we just launched this just a few weeks ago, so this is consider this V1. We have way more features coming. So right now, it only works with graded books, but we are going to be adding raw books to it. So right now, it's only for graded books. You can add your books there because we have all the pricing information. You can add your books to your portfolio, and we show you in real time sort of the value based on our FMV calculator, so you can see like, hey, your portfolio is worth, $1,000 or whatever it is. And the cool thing here, though, is that it allows people to add their books where they can manage it all in one place. They can see the value of it go up and down. There's a lot of cool features coming out, but also if and when they're ready to sell, even if they may not want to sell the book at the time, if and when you eventually want to sell the book, all you have to do is it's just one tap that just says like list for sale, and suddenly you have it like now it's for sale like instantly.
So you don't have to go in there and add another listing.
No, you don't have to relist it again. It's just it's the same process as selling. So if you're selling a book or adding it to your portfolio privately, it's the same exact process because we're still pulling all the metadata from the book. We're still calculating the FMV, all the same, except you choose one path. It's like either for sale or you're just adding it to your portfolio. But when you want to sell, all I have to do is just tap a button. So again, for us, we just want to make selling easier, right? It's like, why would we make someone go through the same process again if they just want to sell it? It's just they can all go through the same process, and you just list the book for sale. And so again, this is a really cool feature for us. There's a lot more coming. There's a lot of cool stuff that we're going to be doing here. Obviously, most importantly is opening up to raw books. That's something that we're actively working on. So that will be coming. I know we have had a couple of customers ask, like, "Oh, it's not tracking." Well, it's coming. It's there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline that we're super excited about.
They want it now, man.
Is there anything that you can tease about what's coming? I mean, I'm not going to ask you to share trade secrets or anything like that, but is there anything like that you're like super passionate about that's coming? I mean, there's already a lot. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just improving, all the like making price guide better, making portfolio better, making the buying and selling experience better. But during Shortbox Live during my keynote, I mentioned that we're actually building auctions. Like we're entering the auction space, and so we're going to be building auctions within Shortbox, and really that's what the team is focused on right now. We're going through a sprint across our product and engineering teams to get this built. We want to have this launched in late summer, early fall. Fingers crossed that we can get it out and test it and have it work and enter the auction space. Again, a lot of this comes from a place of frustration. I have been buying at auction for many, many years across every conceivable auction platform. There's always something to complain about. There may be something to be complaining about on Shortbox, right? But then what's important is that like we iterate and that we improve it and that we actually listen to feedback instead of having the same website for the past 20 years, right? So it's like it's our job to constantly improve and iterate and listen to our customers and build the features that we think they need, and that includes raw books. That's going to include auctions, and so that's really something that we're super excited about and just singularly focused on over the next couple months just to get this out the door. So auctions will be fun when it's out.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of fun, I mean, me and JJ did a couple of like streams, like commentating, because we used to work with with not Restream but Stream Lounge, and so you could like stream and like almost commentate. And I still am bullish on this. I think auctions are must-see TV, especially like it's aspirational, right? So if there's like an AF-15 that's a 9.2, I am never going to own that. Like it's just not in the cards for me.
But it's cool to see people spend that kind of money.
I still think it's entertaining if you're a fan of the hobby. Like I can't imagine. I had a friend come in last weekend, and we were talking about like he's a big sports guy. We're talking about like Jordan rookies and stuff like that. And he was astounded to see like how much PSA 10s are going for, and like the couple hundred or 300, 400, 500, he's like, "Are you serious?" He's like, I saw these as kids for like $600. I'm like, "Yeah, it's crazy." And so we were talking about auctions and things like that. I just am so bullish on the fact that for people to watch it, and it's almost like reality TV for collectors.
I enjoy watching auctions.
I love it. I love it. I mean, it's so just throwing that out there, but I'm excited for that.
Nice.
But that's all I got. I mean, this has been, went through a ton of stuff. Is there anything that that we didn't talk about? You did say, I don't know if you have time still, but you did tease in an email that potentially we could see some of the private collection.
Only because literally right before I hopped on here, I got a package delivered, and I had like 5 minutes to go before I had to hop on the stream, and I was like, oh, I'll wait till after. But we're all collectors. It's like you get a package, you want to open it the second it like lands on there, and it got delivered to our office, and this is a personal collection book. And I was like, okay, well, I've got 5 minutes before I have to hop on the show. Like, screw it, let me just open it and just see it. And I got him so happy. So if you would allow me, I would love to show it off.
Yeah.
This has been sort of a long time coming here. Just again, we're all collectors. We love showing off, what we're into. I've got one thing here. So before I show it, I love collecting Golden Age books. I'm a Golden Age collector. I love it all. I love, Timely, L.B. Schomburg, L.B. Cole. I love pre-code horror. I love go-girl art. I love the humor stuff. But a couple of years ago, I started collecting Archies. There's something about Archie comics that is just pure Americana. Right? It's part of the fabric of our culture, of America's culture. It's just pure. And a lot of these books, you kind of, it's like looking through a time capsule, because Archie comics have been around and have evolved in decade over decade. And so I decided, a couple of years ago that, okay, we all, like, as collectors, our collection focus like evolves and changes over time. Sometimes like, oh, I'll collect, ASM 1 through 100. Oh, I'm going to collect, Bronze Age horror or what have you. And so I decided a couple years ago to put together an Archie run of 1 through 50. There's thousands of Archie books out there, but I was like, you got to focus. And I was like, this is going to be a multi-year journey. I'm only going to buy them at conventions or on Shortbox, and that was it. Or just like directly from collectors that I know, like not like on eBay or like otherwise. Just I want it to be fun, and spending a few years putting that together. And then that was about 2 years ago. And then one of the big books in the collection just keeps getting more and more expensive. And finally, like, one came up, and I realized that if I waited until the end, however many years down the line to buy it, it's going to end up costing twice as much. So I just sort of had to like bite the bullet. And so like I sold, a few books from my personal collection. It was really hard to let those go, but I ended up getting like the Archie #1.
What?
So this is a big one for me. This is well, and it's a pretty nice copy. I mean, it's a 3.5, but it's hard to tell in the video, but you can tell it's like,
the cover's gorgeous.
it's really, really nice for the grade. And so this is sort of what I wanted, like relatively low grade, but just presents really, really well. And that's sort of my sort of preference when it comes to like Golden Age books, especially
really
books clean
and for
so
a 3.5.
It's super, super clean. Buy the book, not the grade. But it's just it's this I'm like stoked about. So I'm nowhere near close to finishing 1 through 3. Oh, maybe I have like 2/3 of them complete, so I still need another like dozen or so. But again, it's going to take me a long time to get everything. And so if I kept waiting for a #1 each year that I don't buy one, it just gets more and more and more expensive. And so one of them kind of presented itself to be available, and I was like, I got to bite the bullet. I got to do it. And so as collectors, as comic book collectors, it's like you buy the book and then you figure out what you need to sell after. You gotta make the decision after. You're like, oh, like, got it. All right, now.
Right. Well,
now
we'll figure out the light bill later. But
exactly. And it's like, well, then I have to like go through my collection, figure out, okay, like this has to go, this has to go, and it's like saying goodbye to like a child. It's like, this gotta go. But yeah, this is a big win for me. So I'm super happy about that. So
I don't know.
Again, I talked about later. Like, collectors love sharing, so it's like I had to show it to someone.
I'm so glad you did. And I don't know if you saw my face. I got chills for a second because I had seen, again, like I must see TV, and I had seen on another platform that PEP 22 is for sale.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, did Gene buy the PEP 22 that I saw? That was
like now it's like, you guys will understand. It's like, man, okay, I got the Arch one. Then it's like, well, crap. Well, I guess now I need to go find a PEP 22 next. It's like just a never ending, like, right, collector's gonna collect.
That's why I was getting chills. I'm like, wait, did I watch? It's kind of again why Facebook became so popular. If you've seen Social Network and know the history, is because people saw something new. And I started to get chills. I'm like, wait, did I watch the auction for a book that Gene got? And I'm like, that is the craziest thing ever. But still, Archie won. And for those who don't know, PEP 22, Archie's not on the cover, so it's a very rare, very important book. But much like the Wonder Woman first appearance, I think Archie won. Man,
if Archie was on PEP 22, it would be worth way. I mean, same with All-Star 8 with Wonder Woman. If she was just on the cover, I mean, imagine if Sensation 1 was the cover for All-Star 8. That would be just bananas.
So yes, I mean, that Archie 1 is just, and what a beautiful book. like, and a piece of history. Like,
It
it's
is. I mean, it is. It's part of history. Like I said, it's a time capsule, and it's art, and it's a piece of Americana. It's a piece of pop culture history. These have to be preserved. Again, I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know all this.
we're all just geeking out over here. We can do this
Yeah.
all day long. Well, hey, this has been an absolute blast. We got to do this again because
This is awesome. Thank you, guys.
you're amazing, and like I said, just an ambassador for the hobby and just in general. And so, thank you so much. And I'll toss it to JJ. So again,
Thanks for inviting me on the show. This is a lot of fun. I love just being able to. Again, I love just being able to nerd out. It was fun, talking about the origin story and how I personally got into collecting. I love sharing these stories as much as I love hearing them from other collectors too. So thanks for having this platform to allow me to come on.
No, thank you.
No problem, man, at all. Like, and if you guys want to go and follow Gene and find more stuff, there's his screen name right there on Instagram. You can follow Michael on Twitter at The Real Rothman right there. Make sure you head over to nerdinitiative.com to check out all the rest of our amazing content we've got. We've still got fandoms going on every other Friday. They'll be next week, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've got Memory Card, which is every other Monday, I believe, correct?
I'm getting confused at all the shows that we have, and there's more coming. But Gene, you're welcome to come on any of them. And talk about
Noted.
And we'll have a schedule. We'll have a TV guide that we'll make for this at some point. That we'll have.
Yeah, as like a little exit screen, upcoming broadcasts.
That would like a TV guide of just like all sort of like the nerd community shows for every day and every hour would actually be super cool. So people can just reference it, like, oh, okay, I could tune into this show and this show and this show and this show and this show. That'd be cool.
You just started gears turning now.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I said, everybody, go to nerdinitiative.com to check everything else out. If you really feel like it, you can follow me at JJ's Comic Stuff everywhere. Is there anything else you want to plug last second before we get out of here, Gene?
No, I just appreciate the community's support, and for those who haven't tried Shortbox yet, it's available on iOS and Android, and it's just an app that you can download and give it a shot. And again, if anyone here has any questions for me, if they want to connect, they want to chat, my inbox is open. I'm happy to chat with folks, and I love connecting with the community. So you can always just email me. It's just Gene, Gene at shortbox.com. So reach out.
Perfect.
Man, that's nice of you for giving your email out.
That is. Well, all right. Well, on that note, we'll let you get out of here and not take up any more of your evening. Thank you, everybody, for checking out the Comic Press podcast. We will be back again in 2 weeks on Friday, same time. Be safe, be kind, and take it easy, everybody.